Hey, what's going on, everybody? And today we are going to be discussing something extremely exciting. It's a very, very awesome day for me because we, as the New York Jets, my team has hired Aaron Glenn to be the next head coach for 5 years. Fat, juicy deal. This is extremely exciting because, the Jets, we faced a lot of disappointment, and this past season was the most disappointing in recent memory. Not just recent memory, even. For a long, long time, this is the most disappointing Jet season we've had. And I'm hoping that my optimism is going to carry through in that he's going to be an amazing coach for us. He's going to change the culture and everything. But let's just talk about the hire because I'm so, so, so happy about this. His resume. So, as a coach, most recently, he's been the defensive coordinator for the Lions for the past 3 years, where he was a part of turning this Lions defense around. It is currently, this past season, top 7 in points allowed and top 5 in rushing defense, despite 12 of their defense players being on IR. I mean, like, you saw how that playoff game went for the Commanders, how that turned out. The injuries were absolutely ridiculous, but throughout the year, this team was still a top 7 defense in points allowed, which is what's important, not allowing your team to score as many points as possible. And top 5 in rushing defense, which the Jets were horrible at this year. People are going to discuss, criticize, the passing defense and say, the passing defense was awful, and the rushing defense, who's going to rush the ball when the team's offense for the Lions is scoring 30 points a game? But my answer to that would be that, passing defense, your argument is that the Lions are up by a lot, so they're not going to be rushing the ball like that. Well, remember that it's top 7. It's a top 7 defense in points allowed, which is what matters at the end of the day. That's what makes the mark of a good defense, regardless if it's a good passing defense or good rushing defense. They were top 7 in preventing their teams from scoring points against them. Simple as that. And the other thing to say about that is that 12 defense players on IR. So there you go, right there. He made the best out of a good situation, or out of a situation with defense that was down and out. Lost a lot of players to injury. The Lions were also dead last in defensive DVOA, which is defensive value adjusted over average, when he came to town, when Aaron Glenn first came to town 3 years ago for the Lions. Look where they are now. He was also a defensive backs coach for New Orleans and a defensive backs coach assistant for the Browns. For the Saints, remember that was Marshawn Lattimore, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Von Bell, Marcus Williams, all drafted and developed by Glenn. That Saints team was originally dead last in pass defense DVOA, and they finished top 10 in that category and second in interceptions in the following 4 seasons. So Glenn knows how to construct a good pass defense. He was a defensive back in his day, for Christ's sake. I mean, and he knows how to force takeaways is the big thing, which the Jets historically struggled at this past couple years, especially with Sauce Gardner being great in coverage, but you don't really have that great takeaway machine that currently at this moment. Lastly, we got to talk about where it all started. Him as a player. So he was drafted by the Jets and became an All-Pro. He was a 5'9" defensive back, maybe 5'10" at the time, mentored by Bill Parcells, who eventually turned around the Jets team and made an AFC Championship run, which we haven't done in over a decade. He was also coached by Belichick, both of which speak very, very highly of him as an individual. As a player, he had 639 tackles, 5 forced fumbles, and 7 fumbled recoveries. 41 interceptions. 41. He knows how to force takeaways, both as a player and as a coach. That's what we need. 2,600 return yards and 8 total touchdowns. He was an absolute dog when it came to returning the ball, whether that was on being a return man designed, or whether that was he got an interception and he had to run that ball back. He was an absolute dog. If you haven't watched Aaron Glenn's tape as a player yet, he was a beast. You got to go watch it. It's definitely enjoyable. And we need some of that on the Jets. Now let's talk about what he brings to the Jets. He is a culture disruptor and changer at the end of the day. He has been a part of successful overhauls since the start of his career with the Jets as a player, dating all the way up to his time with the Lions as a coach. We need that. We need a cultural shift and somewhat of a fresh start after the most disappointing season, like I said, in the Jets' recent memory, and that's saying something because we have had so many disappointing seasons. We need somebody to come in here, disrupt, and change the culture. That's what he's going to be doing first and foremost. Second, leadership and accountability. We have talked about the word accountability for this team, for this Jets team. We have said that buzzword a million times this season. Over the past 3 years, we've said it a million more times. We did not get that with Ulbrich or Saleh. We did not get accountability. If you just look at any of Aaron Glenn's tape or interviews as a coach with the Lions or any of his tape on Hard Knocks, you will see he is just class personified. He is stern, he is a firm leader, and is also personable at the same time. Which is different from Saleh because Saleh was everyone's best friend, but he wasn't a leader. He wasn't a stern, firm leader, which Glenn is. And we've got that accountability now. We've got that leadership. Sorry, my dog. Because Glenn is going to call you out if you're messing up the system. He's going to coach you out of what you're struggling with. And he's going to be somebody that you can talk to at the end of the day. Next, defensive expertise. He is an expert mind when it comes to the defensive end of the ball. He's done so throughout his coaching career. He knows what it takes to play stout and play tough, to force takeaways, and ultimately limit opponents' points on offense. All things that the Jets need, and we struggled that last year. His most recent success has been with the run game. We needed that last year. So, for those saying we're tired of a defensive coach, it's ludicrous. That is absolutely ridiculous to say. Glenn said it himself in the presser the other day before the playoff game. Co-signed by Dan Campbell, he said, "You're not getting a defensive coach with me. You're getting a coach." Leadership right there. Accountability right there. Humility. You're getting a coach with this guy. And to say, oh, we've had so many defensive coaches in the past, it's the same old story. Yes, that's true. But each coaching candidate is different at the end of the day. We haven't made the right hire in the past. At least by anybody's estimation right now, we've made the right hire now. So, what now? What remains to be seen is the staff that he will bring in. We need an OC, a DC, and a special teams coach. The reports are saying we could be looking at people like, for offensive coordinator, we could be looking at Nick Haley. And these are generally all people that Glenn has contacts with. He spent like time after he left the Jets building on the night of the interview, and when everybody thought everything was going to shit because he left the Jets building without a deal. But no, he was constructing his staff. So the reports are saying we could be looking at, for offensive coordinator, for example, Nick Haley, tight ends coach and pass game coordinator for the Rams. That would be a big, big win, apparently. A lot of people are saying that, that would be the biggest get probably in this cycle because Nick Haley, obviously what he's done as a pass game coordinator with the Rams, they have one of the best passing offenses in like the entire league. With an old Matthew Stafford, they are still getting it done with a Cooper Kupp, who has taken a step back this year. Of course, Puka Nacua, he's a stud. But they have one of the best passing offenses in the entire NFL. And to get the pass game coordinator for that as our OC, that would be an absolute knockout. Mark Brunell, QB's coach for the Lions for 3 years. That would be great, especially if we bring Rodgers back, which I wouldn't be a fan of, but he has experience coaching QBs that can't move with Jared Goff. So we have a QB that can't move, at least for the time being. That would be great. Or if we bring somebody in the draft, he could definitely do a lot to coach them up. Then we have Thomas Brown, interim head coach for the Bears, previously an offensive coordinator and offensive coordinator, passing game coordinator for years. He won a Super Bowl with the Rams as an assistant head coach and a tight ends coach. So that would be getting the best of both worlds with like Kaylee, for example, who is the pass game coordinator for the Rams. Thomas Brown did the same thing. He was an assistant head coach and a tight ends coach for the Rams during their Super Bowl run, which means he has the experience when it comes to winning, having a winning offense, and he was most recently a head coach for the Bears after Eberflus got fired. So, and the Bears have been doing better as of late, to close out the season. At least offensively, they've looked a lot better, and they've looked a lot better as a team after Eberflus got fired. So, definitely would be a great get, and I feel like he definitely has a great expert mind when it comes to his expertise on the game. So I think that would be a great hire as well, Thomas Brown. We also have been looking at Todd Haley, former Chiefs head coach, most recently the head coach of the Memphis Showboats in the USFL. Personally, I don't know too much about this hire because he was a head coach of the Vintage Chiefs back in the 2000s. And, since then, what has been his success with the game? Obviously, he was coaching the USFL, but that would be more of a name recognition hire from my standpoint as an offensive coordinator. But for me, I feel like we would need an offensive coordinator who is an expert play caller, who has most recently had success designing plays and calling plays on offense for high-powered offenses in the league. That would be my preference, at least. I would also like to see Josh McCown or Clint Kubiak. Obviously Clint Kubiak, he's done a lot of great things for the Saints as a offensive coordinator with a team that doesn't have a lot of weapons and not the best quarterback either in Derek Carr. He was doing some really great things and making some really exciting plays that on offense for them. And Josh McCown, the QB's coach for the Vikings, obviously former Jet, he is going to be up for promotion if he gets hired for offense coordinator position. Apparently, he is weighing his options as far as he wants to be a head coach primarily over everything. But I don't think he's going to get one of those jobs potentially. It's not looking like he's going to get one of those jobs. So if he wants, he can come over and be the offense coordinator for us. I would love to see that. I'd love to bring him in for an interview. And yeah, former Jet as well. Defensive coordinator, it looks like most reports are saying that Steve Wilks is going to be the hire here. He was the former defensive coordinator for the Niners in 2023 when they made the Super Bowl. Many years of experience before that. He took a 1-year break after they fired him after the Super Bowl run. Unfortunately, it just looks like that was the scapegoat kind of situation. They were scapegoating him and making him be the fire in that case because obviously they weren't going to fire Shanahan. I think that would be a great hire. They had a really great defense that year, and this was honestly, Brock Purdy played amazing, and their offense played amazing during that whole run. But I think they were more, well respected for their toughness on defense. So getting Steve Wilks as a defensive coordinator after taking a 1-year hiatus from just coming off a Super Bowl run, that would be a great hire for us, and I think that should be the hire. Sports Illustrated claims that he's already signed with the Jets. I don't think that's true. Just from what I've seen, I haven't seen anybody say that he's an official hire. So I think that if Glenn can get him, that would be a great hire. Glenn was saying that he wants a former or he wants a defensive coordinator that was also a former head coach for the experience, and also helps to give him advice like as a first-time head coach if he needs any help with that kind of aspect of things. So I'd like to see them try to call maybe Rex Ryan back in for a second interview. He interviewed for a head coach position earlier on in the search, and I feel like calling him back in for a second interview for DC just to humor us if Wilks isn't maybe an option. See what he has to offer. Maybe even try to get Brian Flores in here. That would also be a great option. Special teams coach. We've been looking at Chris Banjo, Broncos assistant special teams coach. I'm not sure how that might turn out. I don't know specifically about like how their special teams has been this year, but potentially could be a good hire. Mike Westhoff, most recently the Broncos assistant coach before he retired a few months ago due to health problems. He was the Saints special teams coach before that and the Jets special teams coach for 11 years. So that could definitely be a good hire if we can get him back in the game. And then we also have a few minor coaching roles that need to be filled. I'd like to see former Jets get brought in for those, such as, especially I'm a big fan of the idea of bringing in Antonio Cromartie for a DB coach role to coach our defensive backs. Obviously, he was amazing for us and other teams that he's played for as a player. He had 2 stints with the Jets as a coaching intern, and he had a graduate assistant role most recently with Texas A&M. Football, which is Aaron Glenn's alma mater. So it makes too much sense to bring him in as at least a consultant or an assistant coaching role on the defense or the special teams, because he played special teams too. He played return man. Maybe we could see some Mark Sanchez, who's been active as an analyst or a commentator, maybe some Darrelle Revis for a consultant role. I would love to see bring in for these minor coaching roles a lot of former Jets if we can, because that would be just amazing to see the nostalgia behind that. Lastly, I'm sure Glenn is going to be included when it comes to the GM search, for which we thought it was going to be his buddy Lance Newmark, who simultaneously did his second interview for GM on the same day as Glenn. Newmark most recently was the assistant GM for the Commanders, and before that he was doing player personnel for the Lions. The Jets, I believe, have decided, okay, like we want to see other options because they interviewed Newmark and said, aside from him being a buddy of Glenn's and tight with Glenn, that, maybe he's not, we want to see other options, just weigh other options against him. So, which I'm happy about because obviously, despite the Commanders making a deep playoff run recently, the supporting cast of Jaden Daniels is not very good on offense. So offensively, at least, you're going to take credit for drafting Jaden Daniels? Probably not, because that was the right decision at pick 2 anyway. So, give me a break about whether or not he would be a good GM just because he's had recent success. Because before that, he was part of Lions teams that had many, many, many losing seasons. So I don't know if he's necessarily the right guy for his GMing experience if he's going to put the right supporting cast around our young star players. Other candidates brought in were Trey Brown for a second interview, senior personnel executive with the Bengals. Bengals have a wonderful offense, and we need an offensive mind at GM, in my opinion, because we have so many great defensive minds in the organization already. We need a guy who's been around a great offense, top to bottom, not just an offense that can get things done, but an offense that has great supporting pieces surrounding its quarterback. Darren Mogi is also a guy who was brought in for a second interview, assistant GM for the Broncos. Similar to Newmark in that case, yes, the Broncos have been good this year, but this offensive supporting cast of Bo Nix has been dog water. We're not going to sit here and say that just because they have Cortland Sutton and Lil Jordan Humphrey and they made something out of him, Marvin Mims, that's a good supporting cast around Bo Nix, who's your star, who did a lot of great things for you this year. I am not convinced. I saw a report that the hire could be made by end of day today, which I don't know why, just because I don't want them to rush this decision when it comes to GM. The last thing we need after making the right head coaching hire is a GM that is incompetent and will bow down to Woody whenever he decides that enough is enough. I would have wanted them to bring back at least, and hopefully they still can, Thomas Dimitroff or Louis Riddick for second interview. Hopefully that happens. Obviously, Dimitroff was the GM in the heyday of the Falcons and got fired as a scapegoat after losing the Super Bowl 28-3. Louis Riddick, ESPN analyst, and even though he doesn't have the GMing experience that most of these other candidates might have, I think he might still be better hire than Mogi, maybe even a better hire than Newmark. Apparently, he's an analytics freak, and he has all the connections based on working as an analyst at ESPN. So we'll see how it goes. I'll make a new video probably tonight or tomorrow, depending on when we hire the GM, to more further discuss their credentials and their qualifications and what they're bringing to the table. Just have to see when that happens. But anyway, if you enjoyed the analysis on the Glenn hire, which I'm really enjoying that we made the hire in the first place, make sure you drop a like and drop a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. And make sure you follow me on all socials in the description, subscribe, and catch you later. Peace.